Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3733 East Broadway. This is a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Comedy on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And I've interviewed quite a few legendary percussionists on this program, but a cat that just came on my radar because of his prodigious work down in the New Orleans area as a live and studio percussionist. It is a high honor to connect with this guy as I continue to stretch the lineage of all musics. He's in the same master drumming discussion as cats like Big Black and Candido. Alfred Roberts, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Hey, man. It's good to hear you, brother.
Yeah, good to be here talking to you.
Did you know Big Black, Danny Ray?
I knew of his music, and I'm one of his followers, but I have never met him in person.
Because when I look at sort of I hate labels, but when I see your sort of upbringing, it was in this calypso bag, right? It was you had your training in the Middle Islands music, and I was wondering if you actually spent any time down in the Caribbean early in your career, because, I mean, Black was down there, and a lot of that calypso beat was down there. I just wanted to get an idea of where you kind of started woodshedding.
Oh, man, I'm going to have to go back in time when I was a youngster.
Way back.
And, way back. In the Tremé area of town, it was the 6th Ward then, near the French Quarters. They had this house on the corner from my house where a lot of merchant marine workers, whenever they would dock and have some time for themselves, they would come to this place of residence where one of their friends was living, and they have a jam. I would hear conga drums and bongos, but I was too young to see them and really know what it was all about. So as time went on, I had a chance to see those guys going over there with those big long drums and everything, you know. And when I got old enough to attend the bars, there was a bar by the name of La Habana, Cuba, and it was run by a lady from Havana. Her name was Georgina. And a lot of the merchant workers would bring records in for her to put on the jukebox, and the music just would play all the time, beginning on Saturday and Sunday, Friday nights, and people would bring maracas, cowbells. They even had bar stools that almost sound like steel drums. And I used to go in with my bongos. At that time, I had bongo drums. The tacky is the ones you had to put them on the stove to tune them up, you know.
So you're talking about they'd actually be throwing tunes on the jukebox, and then you'd be playing off that stuff. It wasn't necessarily a live band there.
No live band. It's just the people with the maracas would come in, and I'd come in with the bongos, and we just, you know, she would just turn the box on, and we'd be so happy to hear people like Cecilia Cruz and Tio Puente and all those cats, and Patato Valdez. You know, that music sounded wonderful to me. I was too young to really know who those people was, but as I progressed, you know, I wound up playing bongo drums in the French Quarter for a calypso dancer by the name of Chris Owens. And I developed a little better then because she used to go down to Cuba and get records also.
This is fascinating. So you really learned to basically play bongos to actual dancers, which is what music really was. That was the original intention of music, was danceable music.
Right. The cha-cha-cha, the mambo, and stuff like that.
Can you talk a little bit about, I have this feeling, and I could be way off, but I just feel like, you know, Dizzy Gillespie used to come down there. He did a couple of albums about the French Riviera, New Orleans. Can you talk about some of the experiences you had within a jazz context early in your career? I'm fascinated by especially the drummers, the cast that, you know, Earl Palmer came out of there. James Black came out of there. So did Ed Blackwell. And they were all right. And I want you. Can you talk specifically about the rhythms, the distinct regional rhythms of where you came from?
Well, I'm self-taught, right?
Right.
So I used to go sit in with the jazz bands, and at that point, I couldn't play the bongo drums. I found out playing the congas was more, compatible with the jazz tunes that they was playing.
Why was that?
Yeah, I probably was about 25 years old at that time.
Interesting.
And I would sit in, and the guys realized that I could play. It would be like some nights it would be James Black playing drums, and some other weekend nights it would be this cat Smokey Johnson. He played the drums for Fat Domino.
I love that. I read that in your bio, Smokey Johnson.
Yeah,
love
that's a real good friend of mine.
Is he still around?
No, he passed away maybe about a year ago.
So he was, but okay, I want to go. Just take Smokey for a minute. Like they were. This was like serious heavy shuffle beat, right? Shuffle with jazz. I mean, can you talk about? Because I mean, Fats Domino, that was the shuffle, man. That was really a shuffle.
Right. But Smokey had that versatility where he could get away from the rhythm and blues shuffle thing and do the jazz thing when he would come over to a club in the Tremé area that was called Hollis. And you would have a lot of jazz musicians. They would play tunes like Song for My Father and Night in Tunisia, all that kind of stuff, where the Congo drums would fit in beautifully. But in those days, Congo drums wasn't too famous around town. It was only certain people had them,
This is, dude, Alfred Roberts. Do you mind if I call you Uganda, by the way? Is that okay?
No, go right ahead.
Uganda, I mean.
Uganda on the Congo.
Uganda on the Congo. Now, okay, so, but with can you talk as best you can about fundamentally, like when I listened to the bongos, was it a certain style of jazz that eventually made it so that the congas fit in better because of the rhythms? I'm just trying to figure out when you first started sitting in on these jazz gigs, you said the bongos were the appropriate percussive instrument, and then over time it changed over to the conga drums. And I
meant to say the conga drums were more compatible with the jazz songs than the bongo drums.
The bongo drums were more for calypso.
More calypso, mambo, cha-cha-cha kind of thing. When I was in the French Quarter playing for the dancers.
I dig. So I mean, how big was it? Just you playing, or was it a collective? Was there a bunch of different bongo players, or was it just Uganda playing for?
Well, at the clubs in the French Quarter, it was only me. I was a live player, wow. And the records was the records that Chris Owens had brought back from Cuba after she went on a vacation.
So,
and I would be the guy sitting at the end of the stage with a big straw hat and big puff calypso shirt with bongo drums, sitting on a stool, and they would come out, her and some girls shaking the maracas behind her. And sometimes on the nights where they had a big crowd, her and her husband would dance also.
Would you say that are there early records that what was the studio also? C Saint was not around at that time, I don't believe.
No, it was Cosimo's was the studio.
That's it,
a
man.
Guy by the name of Cosimo.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about that. When were you first in Cosmo's studios and what sessions were they on? Because let me tell you something, Uganda, one of the reasons I love my show obviously, but one of the reasons I love doing it is because you came up at a time before accompanists got credits on the back of albums. You look at King Biscuit Boy, you're on that.
Yeah.
Okay, you look at the meters, you get credit for that. But you're going back to this early '60s. If there were albums you were on, you definitely weren't getting. The leader would get the credit, but you wouldn't be listed on it. So
that's when I was playing the bongo drums on some little rock and roll songs around town.
So what were some of the sessions you were on at Cosmo Studios?
Some of the sessions was a trumpet player. He's deceased now. His name was Porgy Jones.
Porgy Jones.
Porgy Jones, like Porgy and Bess, P-O-R-G-Y.
Porgy Jones.
Porgy Jones. And he was a very good jazz trumpet player.
Wow.
And we went in the studio. I played the bongo drums, and the name of the song was, I think it was called Run Joe Run, or something like that.
Unbelievable. Can you?
And also, it was a male and a female group called Red J and Norma Jean, and I would play the bongo drums with them at the studio.
And those things came out on like 45s?
It came out on 45.
Unbelievable stuff.
And it was like rock and roll songs that played on the local radio stations here in the town.
This is so interesting, Uganda, because like Big Black, for instance, I've done a few interviews, and I've hung out with him in person, and he's an interesting cat, and he talked about jazz. Originally, jazz was actually jazz, Jass. Like if you were going to go to the brothel or you were going to go to the house of ill repute, that was where the name actually came from. And I wanted you mentioned this guy Porgy Jones, this trumpet player, and I'm thinking back to was he more in the Louis Armstrong bag? Was there I'm trying to figure out what kind of music he was playing.
Well, it wasn't like Louis Armstrong. It was more a little progressive, kind of Night in Tunisia, slightly Miles Davis kind of stuff. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to I'm trying to think of the
because when you say Louis Armstrong, I kind of think about the traditional jazz.
Absolutely, Dixieland River music kind of thing.
Yeah, and we was playing more progressive kind of jazz,
Yeah, and that's what. Could you describe? Because so it's like the year was like 60, 61, and because like Miles was doing Birth of the Cool at that point, right? It was more like, and I'm just trying to figure out like what that kind of sound, that progressive sound, because I think that Blackwell, James Black, those guys were extremely responsible for driving new vocabulary in jazz. And the rhythms were intoxicating. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about what you were doing that was progressive at that time.
So are you familiar with a tune by the name of Cherokee?
Of course.
Okay, that would be an opening song for one of the jazz bands that I would be sitting in with. And, be up-tempo thing,
Sure.
And I would play the conga drums on that. And in the middle of the tune, the drummer and myself would have a solo, and it was nice, And that's the kind of, when I say progressive jazz, that's the kind of tunes we was doing.
Right, and it was actually an opportunity for the rhythm sections would be breaking up the time and breaking up the feel too, because they'd be allowed to solo, right?
Right. The drummer would do a solo, then I'd come in and join him.
Because that there's so much stuff floating around in my head right now. Because what Black basically became, he was able to play bebop patterns on his conga drums. That's what stood out for him. And that was sort of the thing, is like, did you get a chance when if Dizzy came in, or Sonny Stitt, or some of these bad cats like that would, or even, I'm talking about guys that would just play relentlessly, on the bandstand when you had.
Well, look, let me tell you this.
Yeah.
Some of those guys you named would come to New Orleans back in those days and perform at some of the good music halls. And they would come over to this club, Hollis, and sit in with the cats. Because the cats that was in that plane would be out on the road with these same cats, and they would meet each other, and they said, hey, man, when you come on to New Orleans, come on down to Hollis, and we have a good ball, So they had a nice time. Whenever they finished their gig around town, they'd come during after hours and play over at Hollis with the local musicians, and it was some up-tempo jazz. And it'll go on. It might start about midnight, maybe 11 at night, and maybe it's 5 o'clock in the morning. You come out the club, and that sunshine be waiting on you. You feel like Dracula. Oh!
This was you had the dawn sessions going on. I love this. Was there like a Hammond organ trio that you would play with too, like, and incorporate the congas within that? Because that
was a group called a guy by the name of Willie T.
Is Willie
Willie
is he
Turpinton.
in the? Is he still with us, or is he left us?
No, he passed away. His brother and him passed away about a month apart. His brother was a saxophonist, Earl Turpinton.
Willie T. So he was a B3 player, and you would.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Because those don't. I mean, because that to me was the most magical time in whether it was the Fillmore District in San Francisco or it was in New York. You'd have these dawn sessions and it was Jack McDuff or Willis Jackson. These guys would just play till 6 a.m, just like what you're talking about too.
Yeah.
But
those are good days, man.
Uganda, just getting getting down to the core of it though. The drum, to me, music now. Popular music is made for pacification. It's not made for burning. It's not made for consciousness expansion. It's not made for enlightenment. And the drum itself is a language unto itself. And I was hoping if you could talk to the audience about, your opportunities to play in a more spiritual drum setting where there was a lot of call and response, whether it was with Native Americans or just down in the wards. I just the idea of the communication of the drum, the power of the language of the drum, outside of any social context, outside of any musical context, just the idea of the rhythms, the timeless rhythms of diaspora that wound up in Congo Square. The first trap set was built in Congo Square, built with all these other pieces of a drum set. So I just wanted
Hey, you sound like you was in a helicopter over the lakefront watching us doing that.
You know what? I was birthed in 1978 I was born, okay? So no.
Oh yeah. We used to do that on the lakefront, Lake Pontchartrain.
Talk about that. What did you mean?
It was a bunch of guys. We would get together, at least about 5 or 6 of us, playing the conga drums. And we came from different parts of the city. And we would, word of mouth would get out that, hey, man, they got a cat over there in the 3rd ward play congas. Hey, man, they got a cat in the 9th ward play congas. So eventually we would meet, and we decided to go out on the lakefront. We didn't want to disturb nobody, and play those drums. And the cars would pass by slowly as we was playing, and they'd be tooting their horns according to the rhythm we was playing. Then they'd park, and a lot of people would come over and start dancing over there where we was playing near the water. And now they call it drum circles.
Right. But
back then, we just was jamming and enjoying the weekend with our drums, and it was like a certain amount of us that would get together and like a brotherhood. And if we wasn't behind closed doors playing, then we would be on the lakefront.
Back in the time in Lake Pontchartrain when you guys did your drumming, were there cats that would say, "Hey, listen, this is a rhythm that used to be played when the masters were coming and we had to get out of town"? Was it based on a message, the messages of the drums? I mean, the drum circles. It sounds like you guys were just in the groove and just having a ball. But I'm just trying to trace back the lineage, the idea. I interviewed Bo Dallas Jr. yesterday, and so he's singing songs, "Low Water," "Mama Shout." Basically, these types of songs where it was indicative when the slave master was coming. It was time to get hightail and get out of there. Were there kinds of things where you guys were collaborating and learning about what your ancestors, how they communicated with the drum?
Yeah, there was a basic rhythm I was kind of like the premier drummer in the city at that time, and the cats would really like to be around me because I had ideas about different rhythms. I could have this guy play a certain rhythm, that guy play a certain, and me. And there's a rhythm, I found out the name of the rhythm is called a Bamboola. And it's basically like a 4/4 timing. And I would always have somebody at the bottom. I call it the basic beat, playing that, and everything would build on top of that 4/4 thing. And you might have a cat playing a cowbell, a shaker, and 2 other cats doing the middle part of the rhythm, and another cat doing the top part, doing a solo.
And what was it called again? Tell me the name of it again.
Bamboola is the name of the
A
rhythm.
Bamboola.
Boom, boom, bop, boom, boom, bop, boom, boom, bop, boom, boom, bop, boom. You know, like your heartbeat. You know, your heart is a drum.
Absolutely.
And if your heart don't beat with the right rhythm, then the whole body is in trouble. So
And
that's why I say you get that bamboo rhythm going, and everything else is built on top of that. But you got to have that foundation, like building a house. You know, you build a foundation for it, and everything else is built on top.
So great to talk to Uganda. When we talked briefly yesterday, you said I think there was a university. Can you explain?
Yeah, Southern University out near the lakefront.
Can you please break down how you got your nickname?
Okay. Well, you know, New Orleans is full of a lot of musicians, and the musicians have nicknames. So it was a dance troupe that came to New Orleans to perform at the Southern University from Uganda. And we all were so enthused, you know. We said, oh, yeah, man, it's a group from Africa. So we all got together and went to the show. And they had a guy playing 3 talking drums, he called them. And they would sit like on a 45-degree angle, and he would stand behind them and play them with sticks. And the rhythm that he was playing, I don't know if I copied that rhythm, but I started playing 1 conga, 2 conga, then I started playing 3 congas.
Wow.
And the cat in the neighborhood would say, hey, man, that sounds like Uganda on them congas, talking about the rhythm, you know. And then the word got out, hey, Uganda on the conga, come on, let's go jam. That's the way it was, you know. If a musician would die, you know, you used to call him Leatherhead. You look in the obituaries, you don't see Leatherhead. Say, hey, man, I don't see his name in the paper. Say, he had his name Christopher. I say, oh, man, I was looking for Leatherhead.
Can you talk about your first experience going back to the motherland of Africa? A lot of people think in Western textbooks, history started with the Greeks and the Romans, but it didn't. It started in Africa. And they call you Uganda, which is about the biggest compliment you could possibly get. Can you talk about your experience in the motherland of Africa and the timeless rhythms of Africa?
Well, the only exposure I had to a lot of the music out of Africa, I would go to the library, and they'd have these big 78 records, and it might be maybe about 10, 15 songs, little cuts of drumming and stuff like that on those records, and I would listen to it, you know. That's my only exposure.
So you've actually never you've never gone back to Africa.
No, I've never been to Africa.
Interesting. How Uganda, like, this is because you wound up becoming this premier cat session percussionist with all the cats in New Orleans. But I'm trying to. Can you talk about how you made connections with the Mardi Gras Indians? Because it's really a fine line. I'm just beginning to be spiritually driven towards these cats to find the Monk Boudreaux and the cats that these other cat, Walter Cook, these cats, you know, yourself, George French, the guys that are still around. But there's a fine line with a lot of the chiefs, because while they want to promote nonviolence and they want to promote education and they want to help kids and keep them out of crime, there's also a secret part of the society as well, and that they don't necessarily want Western people to necessarily get at. And I'm trying to figure out how you integrated with the Wild Magnolias, for instance, first time you played in conjunction with the Native Americans, and how the call and response worked. This to me is absolutely fascinating.
Well, that goes back to that guy, Willie T. He was the band leader. Willie Turpinton.
Okay.
And we got together with Bo Dollars. And Bo Dollars had a tone in his chanting that Willie T, being a pianist, playing the organ also, he found the key. And we said, hey, man, we could do some stuff with the Indians, with Willie T being the band leader, and we write some music and I think it's gonna come off pretty good because it wouldn't have that raw sound. It would have a more musical kind of sound, with both the way both sings.
Can you talk about? Okay, so this is important. So there was.
And he called the band the New Orleans Connection.
The New Orleans Connection.
Yeah, we backed up the Wild Magnolias.
Who was in the rhythm section there? Was it George? Was it French? Who else was? Who was playing?
It was you hip to the dewdrop in? You ever heard of that?
Yeah, I think yeah, definitely, yep.
Okay, well the drummer relative was the guy that owned the dewdrop, Larry Panier.
Oh my God, Boudreaux.
He was the drummer.
No, Paul Boudreaux told me about the dewdrop because he used to play there with Eddie Bow.
Yeah,
I did.
Well, Larry Panier uncle I think had the dewdrop, but Larry Panier was the drummer on the Wild Magnolias albums, on 2 albums we did together. They called us Wild, and I can't think of the name of the other one. New Suit, I think.
Yeah, no, this is, so wait, so Bo Dallas, his tone and his singing was in the upper register, and so can you talk about how it fit with the rhythms that you were playing and how it worked?
Well, you see, I had the ability to play jazz, calypso, mambo, rhythm and blues. I could change the little rhythms,
Oh, dig.
So it because what we did with Bo, with the Wild Magnolias, we made it like a rock and roll kind of musical adventure. With Willie T doing the music thing with the keyboard and a lot of rhythms that was done. It was a lot of dance music and stuff like that. And we also allowed Bo Dallas and the rest of the cats to keep their chanting involved in what we was doing. And it came out pretty slick.
Well, it certainly did. So, I mean, those cats were, the Native Americans were chanting and playing basically tambourines, or were they just chanting and you guys were holding it down?
They was mainly chanting and playing tambourines and cowbell, and we was doing the instruments like the drums, bass, guitar, horns, congas, stuff like that.
Oh, I dig it so much, Uganda. This is unbelievable stuff. I mean, do you remember the first time that you truly connected with Alan Toussaint?
Yeah. Let's see. First, Alan had a record label that was in the neighborhood that was around the corner from my house. And me and some of the other guys used to always go over there and hang around, hoping to get a time to play on some of the records that Alan was producing for other people.
It was known as C Saint at that time? Was it C
Saint? Yeah, it was 2 of them. It was Alan Toussaint and C Saint. Marshall C. Saint. Both of those guys owned the studio.
So wait, hold on. So C. Saint, it was Marshall C. Saint was his last name?
Marshall C. Horn.
Okay, so it was a combination of his last name and Alan's last name. I did. So you would go. How old? Like you were just kind of you were just a young gun going over there with your.
Yeah, I was a young guy with the bongo drums and the congo drums, and the studio was. I mean, the record label was around the corner, and we would work on a tune. And if Alan liked it, then he would go in the studio and record it. Either with Cosimo or something like that. And later on, Alan, began to own the studio and got all the tapes and stuff put in there, and it was called C. Saint Recording Studio. And that's when he hired me to record a couple of times with the Meters and a few times on some of his works. And that was my first real introduction to rhythm and blues and rock and roll.
Could you talk about I had a chance to interview Alan before he rest in peace, and it was such everything. It was like a balloon. Every time I would float a question to him, he would just take off with such a beautiful poetic response. And can you talk about the magic? I mean, there's only 2 letters that separate magic and music, and I just wanted you to talk about the magic of Alan Toussaint, especially to those peeps who are millennials and younger cats who just to know, because the albums are great, the music is great, and this is not about preservation. This is truly about promotion, because the albums that were made in his studios were full of love, and that's why the music was able to breathe so much. And I just wanted you to talk about Maybe something that is often overlooked about his genius and his magic.
Well, he specialized in knowing how to satisfy the musician, make everything comfortable for him, so that while we waiting downstairs to get a session on something, one of his productions, he would have like a pool table. He'd have a lady that come in and cook meals for us and things like that, homemade cakes. You know, we kept us comfortably because we were young, and it would be like 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and rather than us go home or something like that to get the dinner and all that kind of stuff, we had all those things right there for us, and when it was time to go in and record, we was already there.
So basically, even though you maybe weren't completely professional at that point, he still understood the cultural value. He wanted you guys to hang around. He didn't want you going, right?
Yeah, he would go upstairs and write the music, and he knew what instruments he would want on those songs. And then he would come down and he'd pick out certain cats and make arrangements for them to do something that day or either sometime in the near future.
Wow. So wow, this is so.
So that was the working studio for us in the Tremé area.
Absolutely. No, and so let's just talk about this, Uganda. This is important. Can you talk about how you assimilated to R&B and rock and roll when you had a chance to play with the Meters and with Alan?
Well, you know, New Orleans is a very rhythmatic city.
Rhythmatic.
A lot of percussion.
A lot
things going on, you know, and it didn't really go into the hand drumming because they had a law that the government in the city that put down on the musicians about hand drumming. The slaves came from Africa to New Orleans, and the government figured, you know, they playing those drums, they might be bringing some chaotic stuff to the city. So maybe we ought to pass a law where they don't do all that hand drumming stuff because we don't understand what they're doing. So that left the African with a lot of rhythm, but now it's against the law to play the hand drums. So here we go with the government with the Western instruments, the piano, the guitar.
The classical, the Europe. Okay, so wait, this is, and can you pinpoint a year when the ordinance, the local government cracked down on the hand drum?
It's back in the days. I couldn't quote you the exact year that it went down like that.
What was it? Was it before you were even?
It was before I was born.
Oh, it was before. Okay, so this is going back before Uganda was even was even birthed.
Right.
Okay,
right,
I dig. So they brought in the European classical percussion, like pianos and things like that. So go ahead.
Right.
Continue.
Right. That's why there's so much rhythm going on. When you hear a cat playing a guitar or piano, like Professor Longhair, he's not going to play it straight like a symphonic piano player. He's going to do a whole lot of percussion playing on that keyboard, you know, on that piano.
Oh, I love it. Heavy percussion.
Like a drummer.
Oh, definitely. When did?
So that's why him and I got together so easily, because it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and him and I had the same kind of little style. I think maybe in his younger days he probably played on some bongo drums or something.
Well, I mean, so when you were playing the calypso and playing for that singer that I can't remember the name.
Chris Owen.
Chris Owen had the was the because the rhythms of those hand drums were so intimidating to Western people. Had they loosened it up a little bit? I mean,
yeah, they loosened up a lot. It was the calypso sound, the mambo sound, the cha-cha-cha kind of sound. All that was flourishing then.
Right, it's flourishing, and then you get into the studio with Ziggabu, who's a second-line drummer. I mean, how did you find a way to incorporate the hand drum within the music that the Meters were playing?
I guess having ears like an elephant.
Big old huge elephant ears, dude. I love that, man.
Yes, indeed.
Oh man, tell me a gig where your ears grew the most on the bandstand. You're 100% right. All the cats I talk to they're just huge elephant ears, and they always talk.
It was a time I played with the Philharmonic Symphony here in New Orleans.
And talk about that, because that's
it was a time they called Beethoven in blue jeans. In other words, you can come to the symphony with your blue jeans on, dressed real comfortably, you know. And it would be at a nice music hall downtown New Orleans called the Orpheum Theater. And the music piece was written by a trumpeter by the name of Hannibal Lukumbi.
Mm.
And he used a piano player, I think, from Japan, from New York, to come down to play that piece that he wrote, and he had me to accompany her on congas. And at the rehearsal time, you know, they had the director standing up directing the other part of the orchestra, and we was like past the director. And they told me, you never turn around and look back at the conductor. I said, oh, no. No, you can't do that. You got to keep looking straight ahead. Because every now and then I turn around, because nothing was amplified.
Right.
You know, it was all acoustics, you know.
Oh, that's interesting. That's why your ears grew the most.
I think so.
What year was that?
Man, you know, I'm 74 now.
I'm stretching you out. Yeah, I know.
You stretching me a little bit there, but it's back in the days when they had that Beethoven and Blue Jean series for the Philharmonic.
I'm gonna have to look Beethoven and Blue Jeans. So it was a kind of a casual.
Casual. Go to symphony casually.
And so when you're talking, there was like an upright acoustic bass and drums, or like what kind of? And there was no amplification.
No amplification. They had the big kettle drums, the guy playing those in the back, and he had a percussionist next to him ringing the bell every now and then, and me and the piano player was sitting in front of the orchestra, and we would listen to our parts and do what we had to do.
So you actually had specific percussion parts that you would work into the actual symphonic piece.
Right.
I dig that. I dig that so much, man. That is so awesome.
So that's when my ears was a little bigger than the elephant ears.
Dude, you had you had monstrous elephant ears going. I mean, even all the great studio drummers, Earl Palmer, Ron Tutt, who I've had a chance to interview, Hal Blaine, they all just, when I asked them about how they were able to be so flexible across all, you know, before, when it was all music, when it was the Duke Ellington School, before we got all stratified, and they just all said you have to have just massive elephant ears. Huge.
Oh, yeah, that's what they say, huh?
Well, I'm just curious about, you know, I talked to Bo Dallas Jr., and he's doing an event with the sort of the old Wild Magnolias group with the new one coming up in September about stopping violence. And I just wanted to get your perspective about how we've gone from a culture, how music has changed in terms of what it stands for in our culture, and how we've gotten to a point now where we glorify violence, to a point now where, you know, you're just seeing a lot of carnage and it's being glorified or being amped up, you know, and it doesn't seem to really make a lot of sense. And to me, one of the reasons that, I mean, there's always been bloodshed, there's always been ugliness, but music had a serious significance in our culture, and I wonder how you feel it's changed over time.
Oh, let's see. I think it's got a lot to do with your home training, for number one.
What does that mean?
You know, like your mother and your father.
I dig.
Your disciplinary procedures that you was raised up with, you know, and going to school and getting off into music. And today, the old folks gone. You know, ain't nobody, you know, really, you got younger grandmothers than you had during the time when I was coming up.
That's right.
And during my days, disciplinary was the thing, what the call of the day. So it even went to the way you would respect your fellow man, and also the way you would play your music.
Musicians were also treated with a huge amount of respect. I mean, I look at the musicianship has also almost become it's an art, and we live in this time of everything being quantified, and you can't really quantify music, so therefore it's become it's almost like not a profession anymore. You can pay to play, you can play for the door, and it's just functionally it's changed the significance of it. I'd like you to talk a little bit about what you do today. What is the most impactful sort of teaching, if that's the right word, that you do today to help to keep the lineage intact of all the great stuff that because you came up during really a renaissance in music for couple of decades. And
well, I'm involved with a program that's called Keeping Jazz in the Elementary Schools, and it's a foundation that comes out of New York City.
Yeah.
With the help of some generous donations. And what they do, they provide the legendary musicians the opportunity to perform in the elementary schools for the kids and to introduce them to jazz and different types of music and the instruments themselves. And that's what I do. Every month, I play with a jazz group that's called Sullivan Dabney Music Jazz Band.
Whoa!
And it's about 5 pieces.
Who's in that? Who's in that group?
You got I may not know everyone's name, but you have let me see, Michael Pierce on saxophone family, and you have Sullivan Dabney. He's the drummer, the lead of the band, and vocalist, and you have a keyboardist. They call him Happy Feet because his feet are always up in the air, going up and down when he plays. I can't think of his name. And there's an upright bass player. They call him Fingers because the way he played the bass, wonderful sound. And they have me on percussion.
When I got the impression that this was. This foundation also allowed for musical instruments to be bought and for kids to actually be part of. Like you're just saying, it's a once a month thing where you go in and sort of give them a musical showcase, or is this something where you have younger peeps learning to play instruments and forming bands and things like that, or does it go that far?
It doesn't go that far. This is like a 45-minute thing, sometime early in the morning, about 8, 9 in the morning, or either sometime 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And what we do is we play the music for the kids, and then we have a question and answer series with the kids and find out what curiosities they have on their mind concerning instruments. And we'll start off, Mr. Sullivan, starts off by saying, "Is there anyone that want to make music a profession for the future?"
Right.
And the kids raise their hands, and you see where they're really interested in the music, because I think during the summertime, their parents probably send them to jazz camps or something like that. And when we come and show them the instruments a little closer, where they could come up and talk about them and ask us questions about them, it's a wonderful experience for them. And I've been doing it for the past couple of years with them now. And I remember one young lady, she must have been maybe 7 years old. She looked up at us because we'd be on the stage, She said, "Are y'all the first people that ever played jazz?" So we're up there with suit and ties on, all of us got gray hair. And we looked at each other and said, "Well, no." And we explained to her, and she got a chance to understand, what the curiosities that she had. Some of them want to know about the bass. Why is the upright bass is so big? And then you tell them, well, it's the family of the violin family, and stuff like that.
Right. You trace the lineage back. That's fascinating. I mean, we wrap up set 1 here with Uganda. Going back to Professor Longhair, can you just talk a little bit about how did you guys play? This is going to sound a little bit strange. I'm not a musician, but when you guys would go out as a duo, was the music still danceable?
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about what made him a unique character? Because, like you said, he had an adherence to playing the piano as a percussive instrument, but you're a percussionist, so to me, I'm thinking to myself, well, how do we get where's the melodies coming in? I wanted you to talk about how you guys created melodies, being that you both were driving percussion in a duo setting.
Well, his left hand would be doing the bass part, and his right hand would be doing the soloing part, melodic part. And I would be doing the foundation, rhythmically speaking, supporting what he's doing.
Right.
And as a kid, raised in New Orleans, I used to hear Professor Longhair music from the bars in the neighborhood when I was a kid. So I was already familiar with hearing Big Chief and Tipatina and Go to the Mardi Gras and all that kind of stuff as a kid. So it wasn't no problem for me to play with him live. It's my first time. The first time I met Professor Longhair, the guy that put the Jazz and Heritage Festival together, Quint Davis.
Yeah.
He brought me to a house party where Professor Longhair was performing. And he said, the way you put those drum circles together at the festival, if I hook you up with Professor Longhair, I think you ought to sound good playing together. And that's what happened. Him and I played together at a house party, and that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship after that. I played with him 8 years after that.
Did you travel the world, or what kind of tours did you do?
We went to London, Switzerland, Sweden. Used to go abroad quite a few times. Sometimes it would be duos, and other times it would be about a 5 or 6 piece band.
Did you ever wind up on bills with jazzers like Herbie Hancock or Miles and those? I'm just trying to.
No.
I mean, did you play jazz clubs? I mean, did you go to San Francisco and play like jazz clubs there? To me, like that would be some of the most classic stuff. Because I mean, once you get out of New Orleans, I'm just trying to figure out the venues you'd be playing.
Well, I went to New York and played Carnegie Hall.
That's insane. That's
in Lincoln Center.
With
and another little club called Kenny's Castaways. That was a duo with me and Professor Longhair.
Kenny's Castaways.
And Kenny Castaways, that was when we was leaving, one of the Beatles' girlfriends, Yoko
Ono, yeah.
Yeah, she was going to be performing the next night.
Yeah, you can see that diversity.
And it was right downtown Manhattan.
Oh, I dig it, man. Uganda, can we do...
And I'll tell you this before you leave.
Yeah.
The way I got introduced to Big Black, I heard him playing on an album called Night of the Cookers.
Freddie Hubbard.
Yeah.
Dude.
Man, that was beautiful. I really love that.
What stood out, you know what it is? Black is... Listen, it doesn't matter. I've talked to so many percussionists who were influenced. What was it about his playing that got your ear on that album?
What was outstanding?
Yeah.
His melodic. I'm a melodic player. Boom, 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 boom. I play the congas melodically.
Exactly.
I tune them, they all tune different. And the way he played, he do a lot of melodic playing, putting his elbow on the drums and sliding his finger on it, different sounds. I try and get a lot of different tones out of my congas. And I noticed that was his style of playing also.
I mean, it
was a rarity for me to hear somebody playing like that, because I'm used to hearing cats like Patato Valdez and Armando Peraza playing a lot of Latin influence kind of playing.
Did you know Chano Pozo? Did you know that cat? Or, I mean, did you hear him play?
I heard him play in Tata Wieners. I heard him play also on records.
Right. He's often considered the first guy to put the Afro-Cuban percussion into jazz. Uganda, if you could, what do you think you were the first to do? I mean, I don't want to say it like that. I mean, but what was your, a lot of cats would, after a while you get your own individual voice. If you were, when people would come up to you, especially early on, they'd say, I've never heard anybody do something like this before. What was your sort of trademark that that really where you found your own individual voice in your playing? Because I mean, for you to come in and be the first call percussionist for all the cats, you were doing something. You were cooking the groove. Could you talk about what you think put your ego aside and what your like Black said, he was a bebop percussionist. What were you?
I think I taught myself how to play, and I started with the bongo drums, and I took a little bit of the calypso mambo kind of sound, applied it to Congo drums, and I made it more like a jazzy kind of thing when I started hearing a lot of the jazz bands that I was sitting in with. And like I say, I'm a melodic player, and I do it my way.
Well, we're going to do set 2 real soon. We got more to do. It's so great to connect with you, man. And I'm just trying to reach back into the lineage of the music and find you guys and disseminate these stories all over the new media so people can be enlightened.
See what it is? I never want to sound like somebody else.
Exactly. Well, that's your generation, man. That's the biggest conundrum I look at nowadays is the formulaic nature of music. Everybody wants to comp somebody else, and your generation, if somebody came up to you and said, yo, you sound just like this person, you want to slit your wrists. So I'm trying to say, boy, you know, and I say this very seriously, when you get to a point where you're just, it's so formulaic and there's no individuality, that's how you get another Hitler. You understand? Okay? So, but when you have that individuality and you have that strength in numbers and you have that intercollaboration of cultures, you ward off that stuff. But, you know, we're not that far away from it, especially now in this time of digital loops, electronic tracks, drum. Once the drum machine came in, then drummers started trying to sound like a drum machine instead of trying to sound like Max Roach or Pete LaRocca or Joe Chambers or
you remind me of a experience I had. I was playing with some young cats called Groove Sec.
Yep.
And we was traveling, backing up cats like Fred Wesley, going up around California.
Sure.
And the young cats that was following this group would come and see us playing, and they'd come up to me. One cat would say, "Hey, man, I see you do it the old time way, eh? You play with your hands." Hey, what you talking about? He said, "Oh, man, they got cats use drum machines and all that kind of stuff. They don't play with their hands no more."
Well, I think
so he found that kind of strange.
Well, and I think that ultimately you can boomerang as far away from the source as possible. And my job, really, as a broadcaster and a journalist, is to swing that pendulum back to the roots of it. And yeah. I only think that I only wonder sometimes, is it going to take a complete economic and cultural collapse to really go back to the roots of everything? Because it hasn't gone too far to the point where people are like, yeah, you don't even use your hands actually to connect with the actual wood. You just use electronics, you know. So
they're coming out with synthetic heads. They don't really want to use skins anymore.
Well, I mean, you can't get more sterile than that. You know, you might as well just cut it all off. But my show is about burning, and you are a burning player, and let's plan on doing set 2 in the next couple of weeks.
Say that again?
Let's plan on doing another set in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
All right?
Okay. All wonderful. Right. You got my number.
Oh, yeah, Uganda. It's great to hear you, man. Thanks for dropping some knowledge on us today. I'll get you a copy.
Yeah, you're right.
And listen, I'll get you send me a picture that you want, and I'll put this up on my website, and you'll have an audio link to it, and we can and I'll get you a copy of this right away.
Okay. I'll do what I can. I'm not as computer literate as you think I am with sending you pictures, but I'll do the best I can.
Let me tell you something. Don't worry about it. Let me take care of it. I'll get you a link to this later, and then all you got to do is press the triangle and press play, and you can listen back to the interview, okay?
Okay, wonderful.
Hey, much love, Uganda. Talk to you soon.
Yeah,
man.
Nice talking with you, man.
Later on, dude.
Take care.
Later. Heavy day here on the Jake Feinberg Show. Dan Healy in hour 1. And followed that up with Alfred Roberts, Uganda, massive percussionist from the New Orleans area. Not sure what else is in store this week, but we'll be back at some point. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Peace.